Why would you say we adopt
All
the
right, we
agenda?
adopt the agenda.
Okay.
You are our agenda, so very pleased to have you. We'll quickly introduce ourselves and then turn it over to you. My name's Adam. I'm one of the co-chairs of preservation.
Karpen, member of preservation.
I am Klari, also a member.
And Madge Rosenberg, co-chair.
So over to you guys.
Yeah, take it away.
So I am Kate Toth, the executive director of Bricks and Mortals. I'm from the city and from the Bronx, and looking forward to talking with everybody.
For listening.
Manor, you want to?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
And you are?
Oh, my name is Manur, and I am the program manager at Bricks and Mortals. I moved to the city 3 years ago, and I don't plan on leaving anytime soon.
Excellent.
All right, so we get started. Thank you for having us all today. Let's get started. So, who's Bricks and Mortals? Bricks and Mortals is a grassroots membership organization that was officially launched in 2019, but the organization began a few years ago, a few years before that, with many of our current members meeting with the Manhattan Borough President's Office to talk about issues related to faith-based community. Our mission is for houses of faith to have the knowledge, connections, access to resources, and advocacy they need to manage their properties in service of their missions and communities, understand and address new realities that affect faith communities and their real estate, build resilience, and take charge of their destinies and legacies. Bricks and Mortals is uniquely positioned as the only faith-based and real estate community, multi-faith and real estate community membership organization in New York City. We are also the only membership organization that caters to faith-based and real estate people. We are impartial and outcome neutral. That means we don't really recommend one particular type of project or firm. We just provide a list of resources and training we feel would be most helpful to a faith-based organization. And we offer the same resources to different houses of faith, provided they have the same situation going on. When a house of faith reaches out, we work with them to figure out the immediate help that they need, like if their roof is leaking or they need like a new floor, and also talk to them about long-term planning and options for their property. Ultimately, it's the congregation that decides how to move forward, and we just provide the resources to help them figure that out and how to make that happen. We work on an accountability loop that is largely faith-led. All our members sign an ethics pledge, and we make sure no one participates in any kind of unscrupulous activities that could harm faith-based groups. The members elect the board, and new members are approved by the very board that has been elected. So I want to talk about how congregations play such a vital role in supporting their communities. They offer food banks, they host AA meetings, and they do a lot more. Congregations in New York City are in a very expensive real estate market, with trends showing less membership and therefore less income, but just as much need from their communities as ever. And I'm sure you're aware of all these urgent issues, but let me put that into perspective with some numbers. Studies show that the average urban sacred site generates $1.7 million in economic impact annually. Judson Memorial Church in Washington Square Park has an impact of $10 million. And 87% of the beneficiaries are not members of the congregation. Faith-based organizations also provide 58% of emergency shelter beds in 11 cities surveyed across the nation. They deliver 40% of vital human services in the city, including food distribution, school drives, mental health services, and so much more. And we're looking at an enormous impact from faith-based organizations in their community. But houses of faith membership is down, which then in turn reduces their income. And the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated a downward trend that has already been happening to houses of faith for a really long time. Looking at New York City alone, there are about 6,000 faith-based properties in New York City, and that occupies a landmass that is 2.5 times the size of Central Park, to put it into perspective. Many of these buildings are often landmarked themselves, or they're in a historic district. And that results in a very expensive property to keep in a very expensive city. But there continues to be an opportunity and a need for them to play important roles in their communities. And I want to pause for a second, just think about it. The impact of 6,000 spaces serving their communities throughout New York City, throughout all of the boroughs. But now, faith-based organizations are closing faster than they are opening, and those that continue to operate do so with about $70,000 to $100,000 for a 10,000 square foot property, which is like a lot of money. We're looking at about 75 to 150 congregations per week closing between 2010 and 2020 in the United States. 100,000 churches, about 25% of all churches in the United States, are expected to be sold or repurposed by 2030. And that means that all those communities are losing their services and their broader economic impact. There are some examples of how faith-based organizations are rethinking their spaces. Some are space sharing, like St. Paul and St. Andrew in your community board, which regularly shares space for events, and it permanently houses the West End Theater Company. Alternatively, that's not other congregation style, so they are undertaking a partial or full redevelopment project that could create potentially mixed-use buildings or affordable housing in the community. Bricks and Mortals helps houses of faith figure out what their next year, 5 years, 50 years looks like. We develop programs and resources directly in response to faith community needs. And with our advocacy, we're working to expand the options that faith-based communities have. In terms of policy, we've been one of the leading advocates working on issues related to faith-based property. We've been chairing the Mayor's Working Group on faith-based affordable housing and community development since 2022. And right now we're putting together a policy platform for the mayoral election that's happening this year. As we mentioned before, we are the only community of faith-based and real estate members. We've organized 2 citywide summits on faith-based affordable housing, and we offer bi-monthly membership meetings that always feature one, a case study of how a faith-based property has used its space, and another is a resource which could be anything like renewing tax exemptions or city council discretionary funding. Alongside the creation of all these connections, we are gathering and developing resources for the faith and real estate communities, as well as the local communities that they serve. Our members have thus far presented 19 original case studies during the membership meetings, and we've had more than 50 public and membership meeting events. So these resources, they are made in response to faith-based and real estate communities as they come. We also offer what I call our real estate cork board, where faith-based organizations can search for new properties from our real estate community or sell their existing property in a safe space. So what's next for us? We are working with the Brooklyn Borough President to develop the accelerator for faith-based affordable housing, working with houses of faith in Brooklyn to develop affordable housing projects. We have our first annual faith-owned property conference coming in fall 2025. So please watch out for those dates if you're interested. We're also closely working with houses of faith throughout the city as they respond to the ongoing migrant crisis. Apart from our regularly scheduled programming of membership meetings, public talks, networking events, we've been working on a couple of new tools for our members. So the membership directory will list all our members according to their services, their location, and their experience with faith-based organizations. And for our faith-based members, Our health assessment is an annual survey that can help them gauge their strengths in 4 specific categories. That is finance, property, congregation, and community. And we also provide resources on how they can strengthen themselves in any of those particular categories. So what can you do to help us? If you're a member of a faith-based organization or in the real estate community, become a member. And if you aren't, you can refer us to a real estate organization or a faith-based group in your neighborhood so that they can potentially become members. And you are always welcome to visit our website to take advantage of our resources, our trainings, and so much more. Please feel free to check out our website for the different resources we offer, and/or send us a message if you know about a faith-based organization that you think could benefit from our resources. You can also follow us on social media to see what we're up to, what our latest programs and developments are. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, anyone have questions first? Yeah. Klari.
So, as you probably know, recently, New York City went through a whole process from Mayor Adams called, City of,
Yes.
what's it called? City of Yes. And the section of it, the part of it called housing. And one of the proposals there that was debated was whether to substantially expand the geographic areas surrounding individual landmarks for air right transfer. Did your organization take a position on that?
Oops, sorry, I was on mute. After several years still. So we have been involved, like Nora said, chairing the working group, working with the mayor's office and closely with the agencies. We ended up not, because we're a membership organization, we have to have, full backing from our members. We ended up not taking a position on City of Yes because it was so incredibly comprehensive. There were provisions in there that specifically were related to faith-owned properties, like the one you mentioned, that we were broadly in support of. But overall, we did not come out for or against City of Yes.
Well, I don't mean City of Yes as a whole. I mean that the provision about the geographic expansion of air rights transfer. Did you take a position on that?
Not officially, but that is included as one of the policy proposals that the working group came out with in fall of 2022.
Thank you.
Yeah, when we were looking at it on the Upper West Side, I did like a big analysis looking at all our faith-based organizations. And what we found is that that change was probably even insufficient for the Upper West Side, that most of the congregations that had fell into 2 categories. Either A, they had already sold their air rights, or B, even expanding the sites, there was nowhere else to kind of sell them to. Like there were no eligible sites. So it's great for personally, I think it's great for the congregations that will be able to make use of this. But on the Upper West Side, it didn't actually help any of our congregations, unfortunately. So it was kind of a messy problem.
We don't all agree with Adam as to whether it was a great idea, but anyway, I think we do agree that it wasn't going to make much difference on the Upper West Side.
Yeah, I think that the impacts will be minimal, in my opinion, from the properties that it will impact. In the action plan that the working group came out with, we asked for a larger transfer area for all faith properties, not just those that are landmarked.
Yeah, so I guess I was thinking about the Upper West Side where, transfer of development rates hasn't worked. Are there other kind of strategies or thoughts or policy ideas that people are kind of thinking about that might be helpful? I don't know if there's taxes not so helpful because you don't pay taxes already. I'm just trying to get an understanding of
Yeah, we'll see what the.
we'll see what happens. yeah, are there other kind of, and I should say that our member K is Reverend for St. Paul and St. Andrew, which was mentioned earlier. But are there other ideas that kind of get batted around as what could help, if not kind of development right transfers or things like that? Just try to think about, like, obviously we have one very contentious religious building in our community, which is West Park Presbyterian, where like the current outcome is extremely not ideal. So trying to think through like ways we could have gotten to a better answer.
Yeah, I won't touch the West Park issue, but I think, I think particularly for air rights, it's a difficult kind of niche that they were trying to deal with. I mean, from my perspective, and I think from Bricks and Mortals, we continue to work with the city and try to push for an expansion more broadly than that, so it can have potential more impact. And we're always, working. We're coming out with a policy platform, as Minora mentioned, which is all specifically related to faith-owned property, and how they can serve their communities. So that's very specific to those goals. So we'll have some more proposals in there. Some of those have carried over and some of those have crossed over with the working group proposals. Yeah, it's always something that we're working on. Certainly, if there's any cases that, in your district where it's not working that we can learn from, that's a big part of what the organization does. We try to be responsive to the members and folks in the community to figure out how we can make things work individually or in a systemic level.
Has there ever been an architectural competition to try to maintain the church plus build new? Whether it's cantilever or some other method to preserve it?
I mean, West Park.
And West Park, yeah. Or any place,
West
no, has it
Park?
worked any place? I'm saying, has it worked any place else in the city? Has anybody ever tried to do that?
To cantilever it over a landmark property?
To leave it in other means to preserve the church while building new.
Yeah, I mean, like certainly there are examples where the faith property, especially one that's landmarked, has retained its structure as it's required to and developed in other parts of the campus or otherwise. I mean, as Reverend K knows, that there is very limited in terms of what you can do, especially in terms of what you can see from the sidewalk. But if they have a larger property, then it's a little bit easier to work with. And also sometimes it's often the outside that's limited, so you can change the inside to a certain degree.
Well, there've also been instances where the original church, let's call it a church, but it could be a synagogue or something else, has been either destroyed, or damaged, such as at the World Trade Center, or the congregation makes a deal with a developer that the building will be torn down and a new church, call it a church, will be part of a larger development. I think we have one of those in the Upper West Side, although I can't remember what it is.
We're talking about preserving a church.
No, in that case, it's making a new one.
I know there's the one where the Children's Museum is. That was a church.
Well, and across from there, Second Presbyterian, I think, is part of a larger apartment building, but that was done
Years ago.
decades ago.
In your presentation, you talked about like declining membership and things like this. So it's kind of I guess like the overall thing you guys are trying to help people figure out is like, if you can't afford to like keep the building, how do you make sure that like the albatross of this very expensive to main building doesn't, sink the congregation essentially, right? Is that kind of like the best, like in a way that like, that to be unfairly blunt, that's kind of what the challenge is?
Yeah, I think our goal is so that the property is not an albatross. I mean, that's something that is frequently discussed. I mean, they're so hard to maintain, especially because they require such specialized skills that often the people that are running houses of faith, are not trained as like a broker or an architect or any of those things. So our goal really is to, I mean, one, frame the issue in terms of what's happening now and that this is an emergent issue. Every house of faith in the country, really, with a few exceptions, is struggling with this right now, struggling with their property getting older and costing more to maintain, and their population and income decreasing. So trying to figure out what the future holds for them, looking at those closure numbers of 25% of just churches specifically closing in the next 5 years, that's incredible. So our focus too is on the community impact that those have, the secular impact and social services that they're providing in those communities. So we provide resources to, with the understanding that that's the backdrop, help folks figure out what their future looks like. So sometimes that's as simple as, I mean, not so simple, but sometimes it starts at a baseline of maintaining or getting a tax exemption, because that's a complicated process. But then folks are obviously many times looking to diversify the revenue that's coming in on their property or want to serve their community more. So look at space sharing or other ways to do that. And then in terms of working with folks who are considering larger scale development as well, either for financial reasons or community driven.
I have two questions, two more questions, maybe more after that. One is, how is Bricks and Mortars financed? Where do you get your money?
Yeah, I can say the other question too. I'll get them all.
The other one is totally different, so start with this one.
Okay. So we never charge for our services. So we are primarily grant funded at this time. We're about 6 years old, so that's pretty common for nonprofits to be highly reliant on grant funding. And we also have a membership program that Manor mentioned, which has a sliding scale depending on budget. And we have folks that are both in the faith community, both individual congregations or houses of worship and denominations and judicatories, and then also folks on the real estate side, really so that we can get everyone that's involved in the entire cycle at the same table discussing the issues and trying to figure out solutions. Yeah, so that is where our funding is derived from.
Okay, I guess a little footnote on that one before I get to my completely different question, which is any of that funding from the federal government?
No, I guess luckily at this time. Normally I would say that's bad, but right now it seems to be good.
All right, that's good. My other question, and I guess we have time for this, I don't have any personal stake in this, but one of the slides said, or the discussion said that it's ultimately up to the congregations to make their decisions. And my understanding that is not at all the case with the Catholic Church, where it's the diocese. And they've been closing schools at churches all over the place like crazy, often where their congregations didn't want it to happen, but they were, for whatever the reasons were, insupportable congregations. So do you have any connection, any involvement with the Catholic Church and these issues in the Catholic churches?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think we are connected with the Catholic diocese in New York in particular, and also work with several organizations throughout the US that are working on this that are Catholic. You're certainly right. I mean, denominations and judicatories have wildly different amounts of control over the properties or the congregations, and there's a huge number of congregations that are not denominational. So I mean, that all to say that our goal is not to impose an end result, but rather give them, whoever we're working with, the resources to be able to figure out that journey on their own and support them through that journey.
I guess to follow up on that, like the Catholic diocese in New York, when you talk to them, they're not being like, hey, we don't know what to do. You're talking to them about like bigger strategic things, policy, rather than like what to do with a specific building. Whereas some of the smaller ones, you might be like, they really don't know what to do with the building. I assume the Catholic Church has a pretty sophisticated real estate arm, as does like the Episcopal Church and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct that there's a lot of expertise and funding within the diocese that goes into that. And I mean, I think there are certain structural reasons why we are not as connected to Catholic congregations throughout the city. But we could certainly engage with them on everything but, a full redevelopment of their property, like how they might serve their community, welcome other people into the community, and all those range of things.
Thank you.
you think of an example or two, Kate, of a project that you have gotten involved with, and just for help us understand a little bit better how the organization works?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a couple big ones, but I don't know, Menora, you've been working one-on-one with congregations for the past 6 months. So what comes to mind for you?
I don't know if they're directly like a congregation, but we did have like a really successful real estate sale between our two of our members. So a member in the Bronx actually. So one of our members, Dr. Debbie, she said, I'm looking for a particular property in the Bronx. If anybody knows, like please reach out to me. And so one of our real estate members just kind of put that away somewhere, put it on a note or something. And then when a particular building in the neighborhood kind of came up, he reached out to Dr. Debbie and said, "Hey, so do you want this building?" And she was okay with it. And then they went through the process and, finally got the Yemeni Merchants Association a community center, and now it's working. And it really is one of those great stories. Like, wow, our networking is really helping people out. Another one I know in the Bronx, they found enterprise community services through us. And I got to meet them again and say, wow, okay, great. You got the help that you needed. And now you're on like a set path towards development. And we could help facilitate that.
Yeah, I would just add a couple of other examples. Um, a congregation in Staten Island that had shrunk down to about 6 people, mostly of the same family, was interested in passing on their property for no cost to another congregation that had been worshiping in their space. And we connected them with resources to be able to figure out if that was possible within their denomination and get them on the path to making that happen, which is happening right now. We are working with a congregation in Harlem that was in the process of doing affordable housing development, but then was landmarked. Their whole they were in a historic district that was landmarked. So trying to figure out next steps in terms of that because they had already gone very far down the path. We also worked with the St. James Fordham that's in the Bronx that has an affordable housing development site and several others in terms of finding space sharing partners for them and working on issues like that, or working with folks if they're trying to look we've had nonprofits come to us that are trying to find a place, a new home for themselves or to operate out of, and then helped, like as Minor said, on one of the lists that we have, connect them with a congregation that had space and interest in doing that.
Great. Any other questions?
Probably if we think of them.
It's very complicated. Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite thing that I learned recently is that a lot of congregations use, especially ones with steeples, are trying to put antennas in them, which I loved. I was like, that's so
Oh.
clever. So
Yeah,
yeah, you guys are.
we just had this conversation about the fall conference and different interesting space use examples you might give. And that was one of them. Cell towers and also community solar is really interesting, and having the community be able to buy into that. Really, really interesting stuff that's actually happening. So if there are no more questions, then feel free to interrupt me if there are. We would love to be able to connect with any congregations in the district that are struggling or having questions about what their next move is. We work with congregations that are, I mean, we work with Kay's congregations, so congregations that are like very thriving, and 2 congregations that are struggling more. And we have, different offerings for each of them, things that will be relevant to them in different ways. So if you have a congregation that you're in touch with or that comes to you for some kind of assistance, we'd love to be able to be a resource that you call on. As Minor said, and we've been talking about, we really pride ourselves on being impartial in the process and providing the resources that allow them to make the most informed decision for them.
That's interesting, because practically everybody in the community seems to come to us for help from time to time, but I can't remember an instance where a congregation has sought
Interesting.
Probably just go straight to
something.
Kay.
Maybe that's right,
The bus over.
maybe they do.
I do have a list of about 70 congregations in Community Ward 7.
Really? 70 in our district?
Wow. Well, let's start talking to those people.
And I can pass on this.
Wow.
Well,
We really
thank
find
you.
that no matter who you're talking to, there's always something that we can help with. People are always going through something with their property, or as the environment changes, and trying to figure that out and have a community to figure that out with.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for taking some time this evening. And
Yeah.
best of luck with fixing this very, very difficult series of unique and bespoke challenges for each of these
Very
congregations.
challenging.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate the time. Please reach out to us, reach out to me or Manor if you ever have any questions or want to connect with us in any way.
Have you visited with any other community boards?
This is our first one, so thank you.
I-
I hope it went well. We're kicking off on a good note.
Glad we could have you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and thanks to Adam for reaching out to
Yeah.
pick this up.
Of course.
Thank you,
Have a great
everyone.
one.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.
Take care.
Yeah. So that was our agenda. Any new business?
How come we had no, I mean, we just didn't, I guess, any
Um,
any applications tonight?
LTC is moving offices, so they
Oh.
don't have a meeting next week.
Uh-huh.
They also, a bunch of things that we've looked at still haven't been calendared.
Mhm.
Like the accessibility ramp hasn't been calendared. I think that's the main one because we obviously have had so much things. So I
Yeah.
promised the applicants I would email them when it's calendared.
Mhm.
But it hasn't been calendared yet.
We
Um,
met us the week after, I think, 20-something.
I checked the 23rd. It's not calendared for that
Are you
either.
sure? I saw it on.
Oh, okay, maybe it got
Yeah.
updated. I thought I saw 400 West End there, but I'll double check that.
It's
Thank
the
you.
next week,
Okay.
20-something, I can't remember.
23rd, I think.
23rd.
Where are the offices moving to now?
They're moving from the municipal building to 253 Broadway, which is the building that I'm in. But they're in brand new renovated office space, and I am in a horrible office.
Okay.
So it's the same building, but it's two buildings that were combined, and they're on the nice side that's been renovated, and I'm on the not as nice side.
Which century was your building built in, the 19th or the 20th?
I'm gonna say very early 20th. The outside is gorgeous. The inside is a disaster.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they only do like 20 something at most a week. They're 59 community districts, so not too surprised we don't have anything at that week off. But I'm glad that I'd reached out to Bricks and Mortals a couple months ago, so I'm glad the
Yeah.
timing worked out.
Are there any other organizations or programs you think that might interest us?
That's a great.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I can't.
we often do stuff with Landmarks West.
Yeah,
Well,
I had
there's-
emailed Sean, he never responded. So
They seem to be very anti this committee,
yeah.
or maybe
Um,
the board in general.
But anyway, I was gonna suggest we adjourn unless.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, all right.
Some people seem to think we need a motion and a second.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.